Hello and welcome to South2North. As election frenzy approaches in Zimbabwe, in actions reminiscent of elections in 2008, the police seem to have started clamping down on the opposition. On Sunday, the 17th of March, 3 senior officials of the Movement for Democratic Change, together with internationally renowned human rights lawyer Beatrice Mtetwa, were arrested by plainclothes officers at the home of a top advisor to opposition leader and Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai. These arrests have followed months of harsh crackdowns. Just a few days ago, before she was arrested, Beatrice Mtetwa was my third guest for this week's show. Now, in defiance of a Zimbabwean High Court order to release her, she's sitting in a cell in Zimbabwe's capital, Harare, accused of obstructing the police in their duties because she apparently demanded to see their search warrant. This then is the show we recorded before these events. Imagine being declared stateless and not able to return to your country of birth because of your ethnicity, skin color, or religion. Now imagine being on a boat for 25 days and slowly starving to death. That was the fate last month of around 100 Rohingya refugees from Myanmar. Ethnic Rohingyas are being denied citizenship in their own country and herded into camps where they face a triple threat from violence, starvation, and disease. Desperate to leave the camps, many try to escape by boat. 500 people have died in this manner. Myanmar, also known as Burma, is Asia's newest democracy after elections last year, which saw the end of a military dictatorship and a return to world favour. The United Nations says the long-running conflict between the Buddhist majority and Muslim minority population is a humanitarian tragedy in the making. Take a look.
But what happened next was not simply a clash between two ethnic groups. One side was armed with guns. By late afternoon, the policy of the security forces was to shoot to kill. The number of deaths is difficult to verify. Bodies were removed by the authorities.
Well, for many ethnic Rohingya fleeing persecution, the words ethnic cleansing and genocide are ringing in their ears. We've heard those words before in Bosnia, in Rwanda. Myanmar could be next. And my first guest says the international community is ignoring the impending catastrophe. Maung Tun Khin is a human rights activist and president of the Burma Rohingya organization based in England. We'll also talk later on to Kennedy Gihana, whose entire extended family, except for one brother, was murdered during the Rwandan genocide in 1994. Alone and desperate, he left Kigali and walked for 6 months to reach South Africa. And we'll meet Beatrice Mtetwa, who's been called the bravest lawyer in Africa for her work defending the many activists, opposition candidates, and farmers jailed by the government of Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe. Maung Tun Khin, thank you very much for joining me on South2North.
Thank you very much.
The world is referring to your country of birth as the Republic of Myanmar, but you insist on calling it Burma. Tell me why.
The constitution they did, it's not according to the will of the people. And this military-backed government have been, serious human rights violations were done to ethnic areas. Particularly, we Rohingya people are facing, apartheid implementation policy this military government have started.
That's your country of birth, and I understand your grandfather worked for the government at some stage, and yet you don't have citizenship. Tell me why.
It's because of 1982 citizenship law.
Which says?
That law made us stateless in our own homeland. That law was particularly planned for ethnic Rohingyas and other Muslims and some minority ethnic groups. It was designed by General Lewy. That law deprived our fundamental basic human rights. We cannot visit from one village to another. We cannot go to higher education. Our land were confiscated by government.
And I understand you need permission even to get married if you are Rohingya.
Being a Rohingya, you have to apply the application form to get married. It takes like 2 to 3 years, 3 to 4 years.
We saw some chilling footage of killing and ethnic cleansing, really. And violence escalated last year in June. What is the situation now on the ground?
The military government is killing the Rohingya silently. They do not know. They're blocking aid. And many Rohingyas, they cannot go to see the doctor. They cannot go to the hospital. And more than 230 Rohingya women, they are facing serious difficulty to deliver their babies.
Describe the camps for me, because many Rohingya are losing their lives as they try to escape from these camps. What happens at these camps?
This is the policy of the Burmese President Thein Sein government policy. He proposed ethnic cleansing while he met 11 July 2012 UNHCR High Commissioner. He told him that Rohingyas are not belongs to Burma. They are illegal immigrants. The only solution is to keeping them in a camps and sending them to the third world countries. So that policy, he proposed ethnic cleansing while he met UNHCR High Commissioner. That policy he is implementing here.
Now, tell me, is the word genocide appropriate for what is happening in Myanmar? You mentioned earlier the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Antonio Guterres. He's again called on governments in the Asia-Pacific region to wake up and do something about this. Are we seeing a genocide in Myanmar?
Well, clearly it is a genocide where the people, the government is denying their identity. The government is controlling their birth rate. The government is blocking aid to the Rohingya refugee camps and systematic plan to get rid of these Rohingya people.
Now, you've been lobbying many institutions globally, including the US State Department, the US Senate, the US Congress, the British Parliament, the European Union, the European Parliament, the UN High Commission for Refugees, and the list goes on. What has been their response? Is the world listening?
What we can see is international community is seeing Burma as the reforming government, but they are too early lifting up sanctions and they are relaxing the pressure quite easily.
Are you disappointed that Aung San Suu Kyi hasn't spoken out against this?
Well, we are very sad. She's not speaking up for the Rohingya people, because I personally and our Rohingya organization UK and other Rohingya organizations around the world, we campaign to release Aung San Suu Kyi. At least this time she should say something moral authority she could say a lot of things. She can say that, look at these people are, no matter who they are, regardless of what religion they are human beings.
We've had a genocide that was ignored by the world until it was too late. Close to 1 million people died in the Rwanda genocide in 1994. Do you think the same thing would happen if the situation in Myanmar were to be ignored in the same way?
Well, this is very worrying situation, because the government is still inciting this kind of hatred and violence to Burmese public. In a parliament, Deputy Immigration and Population Minister Cho Chong-win said Rohingya is not exist. So this is encouraging to the public to hate the Rohingya people. Anytime there will be another violence can erupt, the government may have intention, because President Thein Sein, he is doing slowly, step by step. This is the last stage. He is getting rid of Rohingyas.
That's where we're heading.
So international community have to see that.
All right, so 14 years ago, Kennedy Gihana wrapped his school graduation certificate in a piece of plastic and tied it around his body with a piece of banana rope. Then he walked 3,000 kilometers from Kigali to Johannesburg, bypassing roadblocks, soldiers, and gangsters. It took him 6 months. Kennedy, welcome.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Lady.
From surviving the most appalling conditions, one of the biggest human tragedies of our times, losing everything, no money, no food, eventually making it to Johannesburg, and now you are a lawyer. How did that happen?
Yeah, it is, for some people it is strange, but it is possible because I managed to make it with the grace of God, yeah.
And yet you didn't leave Rwanda immediately in 1994. You stayed behind and only left in 1998. Why?
I continued to serve in the army until 1997, when I could see how what we fought for the human right, equality, the equal opportunity. But I came to realize as young as I was that that's not what was happening.
So what actually happened is that the oppressed became the oppressor.
Exactly.
And in fact, when you tried to delist from the army of Paul Kagame, something happened. There was retaliation from the powers that be. Tell me about that.
In 1997, they allowed me to come out of army, but it was not the government will. I had to force it.
But you can't go back to Rwanda right now.
As we speak, I can't, yes.
You lost your citizenship.
I can call it, yes, citizenship, because my passport has been cancelled because that I'm campaigning for the equal rights and the human rights violation by the current leadership of
That was post-1994.
Yes, exactly. So now the current military regime, it takes it as if I'm an enemy of the state.
In Myanmar, for example, we've heard that already the language is divisive. Already there's divide and rule and treating the Rohingyas as subhumans. The division in Rwanda didn't just start with the genocide.
Yeah.
Is this similar?
You know those killings in Rwanda? It started a long time ago. There were killings in 1959, in 62, 73, 90, 92, up to 1994, which was a climax of where actually it was terrible what happened in 90. That's the genocide itself. But the government of that time, the all regimes from 1959, all the regimes subsequent to the to genocide, you will see that the Tutsis minority were not allowed to go to school. They were not allowed to occupy the public offices. If you study outside and you come back, you will not work. You are not allowed to go to university. You had a Tutsi girl had to marry a Hutu government officials to have that protection, to protect the whole family so that the kids of Tutsi, your brothers and sisters can go to school, to university. So those were signs. And when the people, the Tutsis, started asking their rights to come back, so instead of allowing them to come, they were not allowed because they were not, they said there is no space.
So you'd agree with Tinkun that these are signs of a genocide? That
Definitely. I have been watching the issue of Myanmar quite very closely. I see it on TV. It is very sad. And nobody wants to listen to to these people. Nobody even wants to protect them. Everybody, the international, the UN, the European Union, the Asian Pacific, they have got their organization. Nobody wants to find a solution and give these people stateless in their own country. They are unwanted people.
Well, it is these sorts of human rights violations that lead to people being in the same situation that you are in, where you have no citizenship, where you are stateless. And certainly here in South Africa, we are seeing an influx of refugees who have been denied their rights at home, and then they come to our country where they also face threats of xenophobic attacks. She's been at the forefront of the Zimbabwean struggle, representing the disenfranchised and persecuted. Welcome to human rights activist and lawyer, Beatrice Mtetwa. Thank you, Beatrice. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, for over 2 decades, you've been at the forefront of protecting people who have been prosecuted and marginalized. Tell me about some of the interesting cases you've dealt with.
Most of the cases I've dealt with really deal with activists, political activists, civil society activists, persons who've tried to insist on enjoying the basic rights that the Constitution says they have, like really participating in political activity or agitating for change, which people should be entitled to do, or just saying I'm entitled to the right of freedom of movement or freedom of speech or of whatever freedoms the Constitution says you should enjoy. They do get into trouble with the law from time to time in Zimbabwe, so as and when that happened, I would defend quite a few of them.
But it wasn't just about you defending the activists. You yourself were harassed and you were thrown into jail. Tell me about that. That seems like a great cost. All of this came at great cost to yourself.
Well, I mean, if the ground is uneven and you do defend persons you know are not in good books with those who are enjoying political power, you do expect to become part of the problem for them, because it's like you ought not to be defending them. And if you're defending them, it's like you are necessarily saying that, yes, what they're doing is correct, you know.
How bad were the human rights violations in Zimbabwe? I mean, I've spoken to officials of ZANU-PF, the party that is in government in Zimbabwe, and over again, they would deny, against all evidence, they will deny that these violations are happening. How bad was that?
Well, it's not often that perpetrators will openly say that this is what I did or this is what we did. And I mean, we know that the world over, perpetrators will always say that, oh, it was a few unguided elements who are not connected to us. Because by day, politicians, by their very nature, will preach, you know, peace, etc. But under cover of darkness, we know that the ones who almost always arm those who perpetrate atrocities.
You are nodding there, Kennedy. You could say the same thing is happening in Rwanda, where there's this veneer of democracy.
It is true that what is happening in Zimbabwe, it is not different from what is happening in Rwanda. In Rwanda, we have got what we call election, but it's not election. Already the military, they mobilize the people night, that if you don't go to vote and you vote RPF, you will be in trouble. You will lose your job, your kids will not go to school.
But Beatrice, I'm thinking that we have the International Criminal Court, and of course Zimbabwe and the United States, for that matter, are not signatories to the ICC. But we've got other institutions like the UN High Commission for Refugees, for Human Rights. All these violations that we've spoken about today, continuing unabated. Does that mean these institutions are totally useless? They can't deal with this?
Well, I think the definitions of some of these situations are themselves difficult, because the world has to wait for a genocide before it reacts. What is a genocide? Why should the death of 5 people be accepted if that death could have been avoided? And if the international community would have said, one death is one too many, under these circumstances, surely anybody who gets killed for their political conviction, for whatever belief they have, that ought to really send out a message out there to say, this is unacceptable. So we have to realistically look at what the international community is for. Is it really, do they really care if a couple of Africans are killed by other Africans, if they are going to continue enjoying the benefits that come out of Africa's resources? Of course they won't. There's absolutely a need to rethink and relook at some of these institutions, how they are controlled, how they are funded, who calls the shots. How many Africans call the shots in the UN? If they get the positions, they're too happy enjoying those big positions that go with being up there, without necessarily looking at what they're supposed to implement on the ground.
And yet, Tun Khin, the then Secretary General of the United Nations, Boutros Ghali, after the 1994 genocide, said never again. And here we are seeing the signs again. Do you feel that there's no justice in this world, that these institutions, which you yourself have personally lobbied, are not going to bring about the reforms that you need?
Well, I believe so. This institution need to be more stronger words. We need to have more proper system. Other Western governments, ASEAN governments, EU governments should come together to take action on this. Also, UN Human Rights Council, other institutions should come. But still, I don't know what they are waiting for.
They're waiting for a catastrophe. They're waiting for the after effects thereof, Kennedy.
This United Nations is no longer functioning as United Nations. It is a matter of interest. It is divided between the West and the Russia and China. So there is no decision taken when these human rights violations are happening around the world. If you talk about the institution, who was supposed to take the lead? It was African Union, before even the United Nations, because we just see always the African leaders are singing the same song, saying, no, the African problem will be solved by the Africans.
African solutions for African problems, yes, yet exactly. People continue to die.
But who are taking taking the decisions? They are the same perpetrators of those atrocities, the same presidents who killed their own people. They are the ones sitting in the African Union. How are they going to find the solution to the problem which they caused themselves?
So what is to be done? How do we ensure that there is justice for people like the Rohingya, who are now stateless, no citizenship?
Firstly, we need the political will from all the powerful players internationally. And the political will must be accompanied by a desire by all of them, not just sections of the international community. And unfortunately, also the failure to just adhere to basic principles of human rights is not just limited to Africa. We've seen that it happens in some of the developed countries, which is why you sometimes get vetoes in the United Nations for certain things. But those vetoes happen also because there is selective application of criteria all around. And so what we need really is for citizens to take up the cudgels and say, this is not going to happen in our own country.
Kennedy, what does the future hold for you? Have you turned your back on Rwanda? Do you hope to return one day? Or will you stay in South Africa and agitating and drawing awareness from outside Rwanda?
I'm trying very hard, and I think if it was not me being vocal of the human violation of the current military regime in Rwanda, I think I should be having my passport. We have contacts in Rwanda, even though they are being harassed, some are in prison, others are, now the websites are being closed. You cannot access internet there. We see around the neighboring countries, including South Africa, the government of Rwanda is sending some agents to eliminate us.
Aren't you afraid that would happen to you? I mean, it has happened before. That's why the Rwandan ambassador was recalled, because the accusation was that Rwanda is sending its agent to assassinate people on South African land.
Is God who helped not this general, the former Army Chief of Staff, General Kayumba Nyamwasa, not to have been killed. His lawyer defending him, and that has also contributed to be an enemy of the so-called state. To me, I'm not recognizing that as a state because nobody voted them. It's the military which voted it.
And for you, you are based in the UK and not in Myanmar. What is the way forward? How do you escalate the agitation and bring the world's attention, or continue to bring the world's attention to the violations in your country?
We are finding out more evidence of genocide. We are collecting information from the ground, and we will raise up these issues to UN Human Rights Council. But from inside, there is no hope at all. From inside, the Rohingyas are living in an open prison. They are living like. So we have to work hard from outside.
Well, it does seem as if many countries, in fact, the world has a long way to go towards embracing the human rights of all and making that not just a dream, but a reality for many. Otherwise, all these institutions that we have been talking about will be rendered useless if that human rights and the respect of human rights is not a reality. Thank you for joining us today, Beatrice, Kennedy, and Tun Khin. Thank you so much, and good luck as you fight this very big fight. For those of you who missed the beginning of this program, the show you have just seen was recorded a few days before the arrest of Beatrice Mtetwa. She's still incarcerated in Harare. Zimbabwe lawyers for human rights have appealed for her immediate release. Remember, you can tweet your questions, comments, and opinions to @AJ South2North or find us on Facebook. See you next week. Bye-bye.